Protecting the unborn. Vice President Mike Pence outlines the Trump administration's pro-life achievements. Making progress. Why lawmakers from both parties say they are confident of an agreement on another COVID stimulus bill. Getting the vaccine. We hear from one of the first doctors in Indiana to receive the coronavirus vaccine. And God's antennas. Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the power of those who pray for others. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Vice President Mike Pence held an event today touting efforts to protect unborn children under President Donald Trump's administration. This as the incoming Biden administration is widely expected to set back or rescind some of those key pro-life advances. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening. Here at the White House today, there were plenty of standing ovations for pro-life supporters, including Vice President Mike Pence, who said life is winning. It was really a celebration of sorts. It was also a continued call for action to protect unborn children in the coming years.
He who said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," is about life. And we do well in this movement to always remind ourselves that when we make the cause for life our cause, we make his work on this earth our very own.
Vice President Mike Pence also told pro-life leaders today that he is proud of what the Donald Trump administration has done on the issue of life, citing an expanded Mexico City policy, stripping some federal funds from Planned Parenthood, and becoming the first president and vice president to address the annual March for Life in person. Other administration officials agreed.
We know today that babies are babies at the moment of conception. No excuses.
We've taken action to ensure that states and healthcare providers do not discriminate on the basis of age or disability in the allocation of life-saving medical care.
This morning, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, led by our Assistant Attorney General Eric Dryband, sued to stop a hospital in Vermont from violating the rights of healthcare providers who follow their consciences and refuse to assist in performing abortions.
And in the lawsuit you just heard right there, the Justice Department is suing a Vermont hospital. As you said, a Catholic nurse did not want to assist in an abortion procedure. She was allegedly forced to in violation of her conscience rights. Now, no one who spoke today brought up the incoming administration, but clearly pro-life advocates have their work cut out for them, and Vice President Mike Pence pledged to keep working for life. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Top congressional leaders appear closer than ever before on a second COVID-19 relief package. Lawmakers are hoping to seal an agreement as early as tonight that would extend aid to individuals and businesses and help ship coronavirus vaccines to millions. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Yes, Tracy, that is correct. Many business owners are keeping their fingers crossed at this hour. It was last night that top congressional leaders did meet to iron out even more details on what's going to take place in the COVID relief bill. They were here past midnight, and sources up here on the Hill tell me that it was the first meaningful conversation that they've had in months, and everyone left a bit optimistic that a COVID relief bill will happen very soon.
We agreed we will not leave town until we've made law.
Earlier today on the Senate floor, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that they are close to a new COVID-19 agreement, which will pass with bipartisan support in both chambers.
We need to re-up the Paycheck Protection Program to save jobs. We need to continue to provide for laid-off Americans.
Sources tell me that a second round of stimulus checks for lower-income Americans is expected in the next package. West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, a co-author of the $908 billion bipartisan package, confirms leadership negotiators are thinking of extending direct payments of approximately $600 to most Americans.
It's basically the four corners working off of what we've had, looking at what they can incorporate in or work off of. So what they actually come up with, we'll see. I'm understanding that it could be maybe some direct payments in lieu of state and local.
Leader McConnell has said that he'd be willing to drop provisions shielding businesses from COVID-19 related lawsuits if Democrats agreed to drop the $160 billion to state and local governments. Pressure for a deal is intense. Unemployment benefits run out December 26 for more than 10 million people. Many businesses are barely hanging on after 9 months of the pandemic, and money is needed to distribute new vaccines that are finally offering hope for returning the country to normal.
We put money in here for testing, treatment, tracing, and also for the logistics of the vaccinations. We put a lot of money in, but not enough. More will be needed.
More will definitely be needed, according to Democrats. And, a stop spending gap also has to be passed besides a COVID relief bill. It could end by midnight on Friday. The government shutdown could take place if they do not pass another stop spending gap. It will likely take place with a voice vote, which will mean that House Democrats and Republicans will have to come back to Washington, D.C. From the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, as those COVID-19 vaccines that Eric mentioned are being distributed across the country tonight, we hear from someone who knows firsthand what it feels like to take it. Dr. Thomas McGovern, board member of the Catholic Medical Association and co-host of the Dr. podcast and radio show heard on EWTN Radio, became one of the first healthcare workers in the state of Indiana to receive a dose of the COVID-19 vaccine earlier this week. And Dr. McGovern joins me now on Skype. Welcome back, Doctor. So good to speak with you again. The answer I'm sure everyone is waiting to hear is, what was it like when you received that vaccine, and what has it been like since? How have you felt, and have you had any side effects?
They vaccinated about 250 of us yesterday in the first day of vaccination here in Northeast Indiana. And I'd have to say that the room was full of doctors who were incredibly joyful and almost teary-eyed because it's a sign of the beginning of the end of the pandemic. It was incredibly well organized. Many of us had our pictures taken because it's such a big moment for us and for the country. And I didn't feel a thing with the vaccine. When I drove home, I was wondering, I hope they didn't give me salt water, and they really gave me the vaccine because I felt nothing. I woke up this morning, had a little soreness in the arm, which reassured me, because I want people to realize that when the immune system causes a reaction to a vaccine, it's going to be tender, it's going to be swollen. That's normal and good. It's a sign the body's doing what it's supposed to. And now I'm exactly 24 hours after vaccination, and I really have no pain unless I push on the area. But it was a very joyful experience.
That's so wonderful to hear. I mentioned side effects. I do want to talk a little bit about possible side effects. Today, we learned that a healthcare worker in Alaska was hospitalized, and treated for a serious allergic reaction after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine yesterday. Now, This follows reports, as you know, of serious allergic reactions to vaccine and healthcare workers in Britain last week. Does this call into question the safety of this vaccine for those people who do have severe allergies?
Of course, we will be following, and the companies will be following the number and types of allergic reactions. It's expected. It's a risk-benefit ratio with any treatment that we do. This particular person had a severe reaction. She's doing well this morning, according to reports, thanks be to God. And almost 3 million doses of the vaccine were sent to the U.S. It's not unreasonable to think 500,000 to 1 million have been given through today. So it's rare. It happens, and we have to see what the risk factors are and if it's more common than we thought. But again, when we receive things like antibiotics, like sulfa antibiotics, they also have, a rare but real risk of severe allergic reactions, yet we use them. So it will be getting more data and trying to make it as safe as possible and find out who is at most risk for those severe reactions.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about being a doctor, in particular, a Catholic medical doctor. You're able to look at this vaccine from many different perspectives. Did you personally have any reservations at all before taking it, or now as you wait for the second dose?
No, even though there is, remote use of those HEC-293 cells in some of the testing, but not in the production of it. The bishops have commented, the Vatican has commented on vaccines that sometimes the need for a charitable action outweighs the remote cooperation with evil. And so to protect my patients, I operated with my face 18 inches from 6 patients in their 80s, 1 patient in his 90s today. I need to protect them the best I can, because if I get it and spread it to them, they could have a really bad outcome. And in the Catholic Medical Association, we have a very robust coronavirus resources on our webpage, cathmed.org, because we want to bring together the best of science, research, and ethics regarding coronavirus and the vaccine. And we are encouraging people to receive the vaccine. It's the fastest and I think safest way through the pandemic.
Well, Dr. McGovern, thank you so much for coming on today and for your time and for your guidance. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Tracy. Glad to be of help.
Coming up, analysis of a report saying millions of dollars in federal coronavirus aid went to abortion providers. A new analysis of data from the Small Business Administration finds abortion clinics and lobbyists received millions of dollars in emergency small business loans during the pandemic. As reported by the group Secular Pro-Life, abortion businesses received more than $3.5 million in loans from the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. Pro-abortion lobbying groups received more than $9.3 million in PPP loans. Joining me now on Skype to help us take a closer look at this is Matt Hadro, senior D.C. correspondent at Catholic News Agency. Matt, welcome back. Good to see you. First off, I want to know, how did this happen? And weren't abortion providers supposed to be left out of these PPP loans?
So the loans were there to help employers, such as businesses and nonprofits, keep employees on payroll. And the money was specifically not meant to go for elective abortions. There were pro-life protections that were included in the original legislation. So what we saw were health centers that offer abortions as well as other procedures, and abortion lobbying groups such as NARAL, some of their affiliates, apply for and get some of these emergency small business loans. So, again, the money was there to keep employees on payroll. But as some pro-lifers have pointed out recently, that money that goes to pro-abortion organizations, even though it may not be specifically, there for abortions, it can still be fungible. It can free up other resources for abortions.
Matt, what about Planned Parenthood? What about them?
So Planned Parenthood was specifically meant to be excluded from the program. Nonprofits above a certain threshold, 500 employees or more, were not meant to be getting the small business emergency loans. But in Planned Parenthood even, sounded frustration when the law was passed. They were upset that they felt like they were being excluded from the program. But individual Planned Parenthood affiliates, such as Planned Parenthood Arizona, they still applied for and got some of these emergency loans. So even though Planned Parenthood wasn't supposed to be a part of the program, some of their affiliates were still able to do so.
Have we heard from any pro-life lawmakers? Have they spoken out about this?
So some members of Congress did, voice their frustrations about this. Senator Marco Rubio called for an investigation by the Small Business Administration. Senator Kelly Loeffler of Georgia introduced legislation to specifically exclude abortion providers from getting these loans. So there were some members of Congress, who did sound the alarm about this and pushed for a change in policy.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Matt, for your time. We appreciate it, and for your reporting. Matt Hadro, senior D.C. correspondent at Catholic News Agency. Thanks again, Matt. Up next, we hear from one of the newest cardinals installed last month by Pope Francis. And more nativity scenes sent in by you, our viewers. The group Human Rights Campaign is calling on the incoming Biden administration to create accreditation regulations of religious schools that would enforce acceptance of so-called transgender rights. Among its recommendations for the Department of Education is clarification to language in the Higher Education Opportunity Act to specify that agencies do not have to accredit religious institutions that, quote, do not meet neutral accreditation standards, including non-discrimination policies and scientific curriculum requirements. Ryan Anderson, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation and author of the book, When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment, joins me now on Skype to take a look at this. Ryan, welcome back. Good to have you back on the show. Let's talk a little bit more about this proposal. If it were implemented, what could that mean for religious schools, and what might we see?
Sure. I mean, what this would really mean for religious schools is their ability to carry out their mission, to educate the next generation of Catholics in accordance with their beliefs. And this won't just be for Catholic schools, but Orthodox Jewish schools, evangelical schools, Latter-day Saint schools, anyone that believes we're created male and female, and that male and female are created for each other, would be at risk of, the agenda that the Human Rights Campaign is putting out. And it's a misnomer. They call themselves the Human Rights Campaign, but they're trying to undermine the human right here to the free exercise of religion and to a sound understanding of the human person and our embodiment as male and female.
Ryan, how does the Supreme Court's Obergefell ruling factor into all of this?
Sure. I mean, part of the argument here is that Obergefell was the Supreme Court redefining marriage as a legal matter under the guise of, the Constitution somehow requires a new definition of marriage. It was judicial activism. But the claim was that this was just about the government's definition of marriage. The demand now being placed upon a future Biden administration is that anyone who doesn't accept the new definition of marriage is, quote, discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation. And this is where you see religious institutions, schools, adoption agencies, foster agencies, private businesses, or photographers being told by the government that simply operating according to their belief that marriage unites husband and wife now runs afoul of an anti-discrimination statute.
The Human Rights Campaign is calling its policy brief a blueprint for positive change 2020, and it contains recommendations for other government agencies in addition to the Department of Education. What are some of those other proposals that really stand out to you?
Oh, there's a lot in this. I think it's 80-some different recommendations, and none of which requires congressional action. These are all recommendations that simply the administrative state can do itself, including things like changing our healthcare regulations so that transgender medicine would be mandated. This would be like the HHS contraception mandate, but now applying to puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and surgical interventions. And they're calling on the Biden administration to say that attempts to help a child feel comfortable in his or her own body should be unlawful consumer fraud. So they're trying to penalize good medicine and then mandate bad medicine.
Ryan, real quick, before we let you go, what about legal challenges? What do you think we can expect to see?
I think we're going to see litigation throughout the next administration. I think we're going to see litigation on school bathrooms, school athletic teams. We're going to see litigation on health care, not just the liberal sisters. I think that's likely to end up back in court, but also questions about whether or not hospitals have to do sex reassignment procedures, whether or not they may not counsel someone to feel comfortable in their own bodies. We're going to see litigation anywhere where people who are faithful to the truth that we're created male and female run afoul of a new government-imposed sexual orthodoxy.
All right. Well, we will leave it right there. Ryan, thank you so much for your insight. We always appreciate having you on. Ryan Anderson, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks again.
Thank you.
A Maltese Cardinal Mario Grech was one of the 13 new cardinals created by Pope Francis last month. And this morning, EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn sat down with the cardinal to talk about his new role and vision for the church today.
And Your Eminence, I saw actually when you were being
Please,
interviewed
if you
once.
can call me Father Grech, I prefer
You prefer Father Grech?
Yes.
You don't like the title of Your Eminence, you find it, you're getting used to it still.
I am not eminent in nothing.
Father Grech it is, so.
If you call me an eminence, it means that between me and you there is a big distance. We are both baptized followers of the Lord, so.
Okay, as you please. Cardinal Mario Grech, Archbishop of Gozo in Malta, was made a cardinal by Pope Francis on November the 28th in St. Peter's Basilica. And he remembers the moment he received the news by telephone that he'd been chosen to be a cardinal.
Somebody called me from Malta. He told me, the Pope has just announced that you are one of the new cardinals. I couldn't believe him. I thought it was fake news. No?
Fake news.
But then immediately other phone calls arrived, messages. And so I said, the first thing I should do, I have to go to a church and make a prayer. I begged God to be merciful with me, to help me so that I can fulfill diligently, faithfully this new call. Because for me, the church is really close to my heart.
Cardinal Grech will continue in his role as the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops, and at the moment they are working ahead of the next Synod in 2022, of which the theme is synodality. Looking ahead to 2022, the next one, synodality. A lot of people are confused. What does it mean and what are you hoping will come from it?
It can have various meanings, meaning various shades, no? But in the Catholic Church, synodality means that we have to walk together, but underlining both words, walk, so looking forward, and together. And when I say together, in communion with the Holy Father. There is no synodality if it is not part and parcel under the headship of Peter.
Finally, do you miss your home country of Malta?
Can I use an Italian expression?
Go for it, yes.
They say, il primo amore non muore mai.
Translate that for me now, please.
The first love remains, now will never die. My first love was with my community at my nation, so it will never die.
In Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis says those who pray will never turn their backs on others.
Preghiamo gli uni per gli altri.
At his weekly talk with pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says people who pray are like God's antennas pointing him in the direction where his help is needed. He added that we are all sinners, and when we pray, we are in tune with God's mercy. And before we go tonight, let's take a look at some of your nativity scenes sent in to EWTN News Nightly. This first one right here comes from Nancy Blanco, sending us this large display of her creche. That is gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. This next image comes all the way from the Philippines. Nanita and Tim Boyle sent along their Christmas wishes to us all as well. Thank you for that. And finally, from the Gervasi family, sending in their indoor and their outdoor nativity scenes. They tell us that they are waiting in joyful hope for Christmas to celebrate Christ's birth. We are as well. And there is still time to send in your creche photos to our EWTN News Nightly Twitter or Facebook pages, or by emailing EWTNnewsnightly@EWTN.com, and you could see them featured right here on News Nightly. So please send them to us. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.